Okay then, shall we, if everyone's back, or at least those who aren't back will have to miss the first part. Next up is David Liebtag, ex-IBM, an APLer of long standing, yes, who has written an array editor to work with most APLs, a lot of APLs.
Most APLs.
We are going to include his array editor with 13.2. It will be for Unicode versions of Dyalog APL only, and for the moment, only on Windows. Watch this space on other platforms, I think is what we may say on that. We are including it with the Dyalog APL release. It will also be included in the software that we include in the escrow service, which we offer to our customers. I've been playing with the array editor for the last 6 weeks, on and off. And I think it's rather good, to say the least. What I've been playing with is effectively the raw array editor, which I had to start up myself using a quad NA call. We are intending to put a cover function in it to make it a bit easier for our customers to use. Over to you, David.
Okay, thank you. So my name is David Liebtag. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Morton and Gitta, for inviting me. I've never been to a Dyalog conference before, and it's a treat to see so many faces that I don't know. Thank you for having me. This is my home. Actually, it's the next valley over from my home. But I wanted to make sure you understand I live in a pretty place. So, I have been wanting an array editor my entire APL career. When I spent the first 10 years of my life as a programmer, as a professional programmer, working for IBM as an application developer, supporting the semiconductor engineers in East Fishkill, New York. And it was during that time that APL 2 came out, and I'd already known flat APL for some time, and APL 2 came out, and I thought, man, I love it. This is really cool. Until about the second day when I said, where's the editor? And, so I used the display function, like I'm sure you all did, to look at the structure of arrays. But, about every third day for 15, 20 years, I'm like, where's the editor? And I want to talk a little bit about what this means to have an editor, what I think it means. When you're learning APL2, when you're learning nested arrays, the session log works for playing with primitives, but it's a little cumbersome. You get these long arrays that sort of scroll off the screen, and it's a little bit awkward. And so I think that having a nice editor where you can easily flip things around will make it a little bit easier to learn. The part that really interests me is that when I'm developing a new application, I typically spend the first 2 months thinking about the data. How should I arrange this data so that it's easy to think about, easy to slice, efficient to work with? And I do it as a mental process. But it occurs to me if I had an editor that let me do that on the screen so I could look at it, it might be a good thing. That's one of the reasons I built this. And the third thing that I'm interested in is, if you're like me, you don't write perfect code. And sometimes I write an application and it goes into production, and 2 months later it falls over, and I look in the workspace and there's this complicated array that somehow is wrong. There's a piece here that's just not quite right, but I have trouble finding that piece. I think that having an editor that makes it easy to scroll through data and look at it will make it easier to debug applications, particularly ones that use complicated arrays. So that's sort of my motivation on this thing. So what is it? A couple of people asked me this week, can it do this, can it do that? The long and the short of it is, if you can build it with APL, we can edit it with this thing. Any shape, rank, depth, size. Like Martin said about the 64-bit interpreter, it's basically only limited by what the machine can do. It does all these things. Yeah, but what the heck is it? It's an external function. It's actually deployed or ported to several different dialects of APL. For Dyalog, it's implemented as an external function using John's new DWA interface. And this is a simple sample of it. Now, I got to say this foil has a sort of a mistake in it. The 0 on the end of this line shouldn't be there because I'm using a cover function. So ignore that 0. But the long and the short of it is you build an array, you call the array editor, pass it as a right argument, you do whatever you want in the editor, and the result that comes back is the modified array. Yeah, but what the heck is it? It's a GUI program, and this is what it looks like. And when I get it running here, I'll explain more about what we're seeing. But basically, it's designed to sort of emulate the display function. Nested arrays have boxes around them. Simple arrays are in entry fields. Across the top on the toolbar, there's buttons for primitives so that you can do APL-ish things to your array while you're editing it. And across the bottom is a status bar that tells you what you're looking at right now. So what does it support? Nested arrays, every kind of character, every kind of number, everything that you can have in a workspace, pretty much. Every real sort of raw data type. The structural limitations, whatever you can give it, it can do. There are a couple of restrictions. It has support for arrays with rank greater than 2, but you cannot change the length of any dimension in such an array other than the number of columns. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the end, about what are the implications of trying to change the length of one of the other dimensions. And the character set is only UTF-16 characters, which is not a terrible restriction. These are general restrictions for the editor on all dialects of APL. There are a few extra ones for Dyalog, because Dyalog has slightly more sophisticated things that might exist in the workspace. The main one is that you can't edit references to namespaces. This is a temporary restriction that you have to use uppercase E and J when you're typing complex numbers and exponential numbers. And this one is also, I put it up here for completeness, but you're not likely to want to run more than one at a time anyway. What is running right now? It's been available as a product for APL2 for 4 months. APLX and MATLAB are in beta. If you're interested in those, give me a call. And for Dyalog, it will be in 13.2. As you can see, it's 32 and 64-bit for all three of those last dialects. All right. So now is the point at which we need it to work. I got to say, this is a almost perfect machine that I have here. It's brand new. It's like 3 days old. There's nothing on it except 5 different dialects of APL. So here's 64-bit Dyalog. I want to make sure I have a keyboard that I know how to type in, and I do. Excellent. Thank you. Better? So this is just a workspace that has cover functions that make it so I don't have to type in the quad and A expression. And I'm really not going to go into that because it's not interesting. Let's say that you want to do a very simple thing. Here's the array editor. It's a vector of 2 character vectors. You can type in there. in any of the entry fields. And when I close and save, it has the changes. I mean, that's what it does. If I go back here, what are we looking at? There are two entry fields. Those correspond to the simple arrays in this nested array. There's a blue box around the nested array. At the bottom, we can see that it's a general or nested array. Depth 2. Can you see that? Is the status bar large enough, big enough? No response one way or the other. So, depth 2, number of elements 2, shape rank 1, shape 2. If I select an element within that nested array, the status bar changes and describes the selected element. And you can tell it's selected not only because it's got a caret, but when I get home and fix it, it will have the focus bar around it that I lost last week. It also has this extra thing at the right-hand edge of the status bar where it says pic colon. That is the expression that you could use with pic to get to the selected element. And you can double-click on that. You can double-click on that. There we go. And change it. Get rid of that thing. And as you change it, you may not have... There's now a little blue box around the word David because I changed which one is selected. This is a trivial example, but when you have a big, complicated array and you know you want to get to that one, this is a nice thing. So that's pic, that's character. If you give it a simple array, it fills the entire window with the array, and it's just a very standard-looking matrix editor at that point. When we talk about padding a bit, I can change it and save. It did padding. I added an element to that row. It did standard APL, like an overtake with the insertion of the new elements. If you don't want to exit the array to see what change you've made, if I do the same thing in here, you can hit F5, which says format this, do the padding, do the formatting as if you were ready to complete, and it does it while you're in the editor. Here's a rank 3 array. We're only seeing one plane of this rank 3 array. But there's a new thing at the bottom. In brackets, that's the bracket expression you would get to this, you could type to get to this plane. And if you can use Alt and the up and down arrows and the mouse wheel and things to switch between planes. So I'm going to hit Alt down. We're seeing the second plane. The bottom now says that it's the second plane. Third plane, fourth plane, like that. No limit on the rank or the length of these things. I plan on letting you double-click and type in that thing at the bottom too, but it's not done yet. So that's sort of simple arrays. Let's see if we can't look at a little bit more complicated array. This demonstrates all the different kinds of data that it supports. The blue lines are a little faint, but the boldest blue line is around the entire thing. That means that the entire thing is selected. As I hit the Tab key, focus shifts to subsequent elements of the array. And you can see the caret moving, and when I get to a nested array, the blue box around it becomes a little bolder. So that's just basic tab. Shift tab moves backwards, as you would expect. Notice that tab does not only move to entry fields. you can tab to a nested array. For example, if I click here, the selected array has no entry field. It's a nested array. I'm at the sort of the first level nesting down into this array. If I don't want to tab through each little element, I want to tab to the next thing at this level of nesting, I can hold down Control Tab, and then it moves between the arrays at that level of nesting. And there's a keystroke to move up and down the level of nesting, but I can't recall what it is offhand. So again, you can just type in any of these things and make changes. And when you hit save and exit, you get your changes. It has some other facilities for making it easier to look at things. For example, let's say that I've got this complicated array and it's got lots of stuff in it, but I'm really only interested in this one today. This is the one that's got the problem. It's the one I'm working on. So I can select that array and I can say I want to maximize that one. And now just that one is in the screen. And I can do that as many times as I want. It's really this numeric array that I really care about today. So I can maximize that one. And I can restore it. And in fact, I can say, well, no, this nested, I'm interested in most of these things, but this one, this nested array, I know that one's good. I don't care about that one today. So let's minimize that one. Or restore it. Or if this one, I want more space because I know I'm going to be adding a lot of data, you can just drag and change the size of it. And notice, if I restore things and go back to where I was, oh, that's not right. Oh, I've got the wrong thing with focus. If I go back here, and I say I want to work on this array and I need more space, I can resize it. And notice all the other stuff, it still is formatted correctly. This was hard to do, so I'm pretty proud of that little bit. So you can do things like I put the cursor in this one and click, so I've selected that array. I can copy that array to the clipboard. You can't see any change, but I can say I want to copy that one and replace this one. So you can move things around. You can say, no, I don't want to do that, so you can do undo, or redo, or undo again. Infinite undo and redo, you can go back as long as you want. And if you get yourself completely confused and you don't know where you are, this thing reverts back to the original array. There's a lot of stuff in here. So this is a matrix, 2x2 nested array. Let's say that I want to do a transpose on that thing. That's what transpose looks like. Rotate along the first axis or the last axis. I can even do things like, well, let's just endless the whole darn thing. Well, that probably was a mistake. Let's undo that. This numeric matrix here, for the time being, I really think I'd rather have that be character. Characters are black and white, and numerics are blue. Let's change it back to numeric. Notice that worked on a matrix. It's not just execute. Here's my pitch for you to talk to Morton. In Dyalog, the conversion from character to numeric is not using execute. In APL2 it is. And one of my main beta test customers really loves that because he puts names of functions in there. And he says execute, it runs the function, he gets the result into the editor. And eventually I would like to have this thing basically be a multi-dimensional, infinite depth spreadsheet. but I need a way to call back and call execute. What else? It probably does something else. Let's see. We've got this 2x2 matrix. I'm going to select this element, and I want to insert a column between these two columns. So I can click this button that says Insert a column to the right of the selected element. There's a new column. Notice it does correct APL-style prototyping. Let's say I select this one. This is a vector. We can see down at the bottom, it's rank 1, shape 4. It's a vector. If I select one of those elements, I can say I want to insert an element in that vector to the right or the left of the selected item. Let's focus on that vector. We'll maximize it, so we're just looking at that one. Oh, by the way, you can do, it does all the right stuff about resizing fonts and all that stuff. And in terms of configuring it, the colors are chosen using Windows system colors. So if you change your theme, this goes along with it. And with some exceptions, because Windows doesn't document how to get at some of their theme colors. What a wonderful company. So anyway, I've got this vector here. And let's say for some reason, it's nice to have it a vector, but I'd really rather have the elements of that vector be the rows of a matrix. Well, we can do that. Or I want to make this array. I want to make this thing into an array of rows, which basically undoes what I just did. But if I go back to the original thing, and I say make array of rows, now I have a vector of the rows of that complicated nested array. And I can undo that. Let's talk about learning. We all know how to do sort of the basic operations, but I've never been quite clear on what disclose does. I use it all the time. I've got a vector of character vectors. I do a disclose to get a matrix. It's great. I do that 1,000 times a day. But what the heck does disclose mean on a higher ranked nested array? What does it do? Well, let's talk about what I'm going to hit disclose here pretty soon. Disclose returns a result whose shape is the same as the shape of the original array, catenated with the max reduce of the shapes of all the elements of the array. I've read that 1,000 times in the language reference manuals, but what the heck does it mean? Well, this is a 2x2 array. This one is some huge number, like about 20 by 38. That one's 2x2, that one's 2x1, something like that. Let's do a disclose and see what we get. Well, that doesn't seem very intuitively obvious. But think about this, what we've got. 2x2, that was our original array. The 8 by 31 is the largest shape of any of the original elements, which was that large character array that said array editor demonstration. And it's a rank 4 array, which is what the language reference manual says you're going to get. And why are there all these blanks? Because it's doing padding, and a lot of the original upper left-hand corner was a lot of blanks. And as I use Alt-down to scroll through the planes, here's the second plane, and here's the third plane, and here's the fourth plane. And I'm not going to go through a full explanation of what all this, exactly what's happened here. The point is, I believe this is a pretty good tool for learning what these primitives do. If you did this in the session log, you'd get 10 pages of a lot of blanks. Well, what the heck am I looking at? I know much more about what this close does now than I used to. And if I do another disclose, man, we're in deep trouble. Ranked 6 array. And, I can go through those planes, and there's a lot of blanks in there. But, if you want to play with it, this is a way to learn what these sort of more sophisticated higher rank, what the primitives do on more sophisticated higher rank arrays. But let's talk about find. If I say I want to find Dyalog, you get this nice little array, this little input field here. Shoot. How do I get lowercase letters out of this? How about if I just say ignore case and be done with it? So next. Yeah. So, it does fine. Let's talk about performance. I said it would take any array. Let's see if I can prove that a little bit. 1,000 million yeah? Million element, million row array. Scroll to the bottom, there it is. Scroll to the top. How long have you got to wait while we wait? It uses the quad I/O from the workspace. So I'm running in, I'm using quad I/O 1, so that's what it is. That's a good question. I meant to mention this currently always. I'm sorry. Does it? Quad ML you asked about, and does it use quad ML, quad FR? It does not use quad FR. I don't even remember what quad FR is. And it always uses quad ML3 because I'm an APL2 guy. But I can easily make it use the current setting. I just didn't. If you want that, tell me and I'll do it. So I realized this morning that I know that it'll let you look at a big array, but I wasn't really sure what the performance would be for find on a big array. So let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's one less than 10 million, right? Not too bad. Pretty quick. So, I know that there are people out there with arrays that are gigabytes long, but I think 1 million, 10 million elements is not bad for a start. And you may have noticed when I did this, there was a little pause. There are several things going on there. There's transfer, there's the actual call from the interpreter. I have to do a conversion from the Dyalog internal format to my internal format, and then there's the actual format so that it's character so I can stick it on the screen. And those are each measurable processes, and there's a little formatting progress message that comes up. And if you have a whopping huge array, it may take a couple of seconds, but at least you know that it's working. It doesn't just hang. And in fact, if it takes really too long, you can close the window. It doesn't go unresponsive. But that's just a simple array. Who cares? Nobody cares about simple arrays anymore. We've got a general array editor. Let's do something cool. Two row Uh-huh. 20,000 nested arrays? 20,000 arrays? I thought that was sufficiently quick. And I'm not going to wait for this to scroll either. So, if you can find a case that you can give it an array that it doesn't work, call me. It's supposed to support everything. That's it. And the good news is it comes with Dyalog next time around. You have a question over here? I'm not done. That's just the end of the demo.
David, one of my favorite annoying mistakes is to fail to cast everything into character when composing HTML output.
Uh-huh.
So I usually only find out when I've got a very long vector and try to write it.
Fling it into the editor and it'll be a different color in a different box.
Yeah, I was wondering what it would look like if you had, say, iota 10 and the third element is character.
A gets iota 10. Like that, you mean?
Exactly like that.
Pretty obvious that's not what you wanted.
Nice one.
I'm sorry. Yes, you had a question
Sorry,
too.
well, I have a request.
I got so excited, you know.
Yes, it is very nice. It is very slick, and I have a request. So the request is, could we get the result not just put back as an array, but could we get the function that would create that array? So in other words, we have a lot of complex arrays for which we would like to have them as a function that builds that array, so that then you save not the variable in your workspace, but you save a function which has a timestamp, so that you can also edit and make comments so you know the paper trail of what has happened.
I have a function that will do that. It's not part of this. I'd be happy to sell it to you. It's in my source code tools package. It's available on my website, $50 for the entire package, and includes a function that does that. Or I could just give it to you. It's not a big deal.
Okay, sold.
I'm sorry, back to search. Is the search two-dimensional or multi-dimensional?
Multi-dimensional.
So you would change planes looking for the array as a word.
5, 6, row, 30 times 12, 360. Yeah? We're looking at the first plane. Find.
Yeah.
It does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, good. And just add on to the previous question or proposal. Just if you can save array as a XML, it would be a very nice feature.
I think really the way I'm going to approach that kind of question is, one of my customers has suggested that I do something in this that I did in APL2 to have user-defined buttons. So that you can say, when I push this button, it runs this function. There's too many things that you're going to want for me to build them all. And I think just a way to get it to workspace is probably a better solution.
David, you can show more than depth one, basically.
Depth one or rank depth? What?
Well, the nesting, sort of the way you tell how deeply nested an array is, I think that's a cool feature as well.
So if I click on this array, the big character matrix, I can say enclose, 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 enclose. And if I notice that the current one, this one is still selected. So I can't just do disclose now, because that's disclosing a simple array, which has no effect. If I want disclose to undo that stuff, I have to go back up to the outer level of nesting of that thing. And then I can do this close, this close, this close, this close.
If I can add, because I was playing with this stuff, and I think one of the comments I had, one of the chats I had with David, was actually that slightly darker blue line is so important, because I was not clicking. I had the wrong, in fact, I was at the wrong level of the thing, and when I did a rotate, all sorts of weird things happened as far as I was concerned, because I wasn't rotating what I thought I was. So that is a really important visual clue there to say what's going on.
I personally am dissatisfied with, I think that should be a bolder visual hue, more easily distinguishable. And I have a couple of alternatives for you. This one is using just a plain line using the colors of the theme. You can make it use, instead, 3D edges, like sort of a old style. But it's still not perfect because we're on Windows 7, and Windows 7 does a terrible job of drawing these things. But if you personalize your theme and select Windows Classic, then you get, it's clear what's going on now. And this is the way real people work. So, for example, if I go back here, end close, end close, end close, it's really more obvious.
Is it my
Can
turn?
can I hold off on the questions? I've got about 4 more foils I'd like to be sure I get through. And then if we want to run over with questions, that's up to you. This is the main reason I wanted to come here this week. As I said before, you currently cannot change the length of any dimension other than columns for arrays that are greater than rank 2, or rank greater than 2. And the question is, what does it even mean to do that? If you're editing a matrix, a simple 2-dimensional matrix, and you add something at the end, it seems pretty clear what we ought to do is pad the other rows to that length. And if you insert a character in the middle of a row, in most cases you're not going to want to insert a whole column of blanks at that place, and it kind of makes sense to just pad the ends of the other rows. But if you're working with a rank 5 array, and you insert a character in the middle of a row, maybe we really ought to insert a column of blanks in all the planes at the point of insertion. Maybe. And maybe you're going to want to have some way to insert a plane. Extend the length of the 3rd dimension of a 5-dimensional array. I personally don't use arrays with rank much more than 3 very often. And I'll bet most of you don't either. I personally think that having this array editor may encourage us to work with higher rank arrays more because they're sort of easier to look at. But this question of what does it mean to insert data in a higher rank array, if you have an opinion, even if it's a half-baked opinion, I'd love it if you'd talk to me. Because I'm at the point where, I'm going to do that in the next 6 months, and I'd like your input. I've got several proposals, but none of them, I'm a pretty smart guy, but there's a lot of smarter people here. I'd like really the input from smart people. And everybody in this room qualifies, so the other thing, this is a little bit easier. I'm pretty sure I want to do this. This thing basically lets you twist things and, rotate things. But I want some way to do a dyadic transpose. I read Stephen's paper about dyadic transpose and vector, and I was just turned on. I've never really understood dyadic transpose until I read that paper. And now I think I know what I'm doing. What I want to do is provide the user with a way to name axes and then provide one of those list box things where you can drag names up and down to change the order. And when you do that, dyadic transpose happens. And I feel pretty good that's the right thing to do, but it's not done yet. If you have another idea about how we ought to have reordering the axes, tell me about it, please. Where are we going with this thing? As I said, it works with APL2, APLX, Dyalog, and MATLAB. APLX and MATLAB are in beta right now. If you want to try it on those platforms, give me a call. I'm shooting for these. I forgot to leave. I forgot J. It should be on this list too. If you have other languages, environments, let me know. This thing is architected with a very thin layer between the editor and the interpreter, and I can do it to any language pretty easily. It took me 2 days to do MATLAB. So if you've got a favorite language, let me know and I'll go there. This is the hierarchy of the thing. The core part, the part that we all find cool, that lets you move things around, that's this bit. And this is the edit control that actually lets you type in a simple array. Both of these can easily be turned into components that we could use in other applications. They're not currently components, but I could easily do that. If you have an interest in using either of those things in your application, let me know. In particular, this thing, when I got to the point where I needed an edit control, I looked around, I thought, well, I'll just use one of the ones on the market. They're all crap. Mine will do hundreds of millions of rows like that. It's way faster than any other one I've found. So if you need an edit control that does high performance stuff with a lot of data, talk to me. If you'd like to know more about this, this is who I am, how you get to me, and this is how you get the beta levels for the other dialects. Thank you very much for your attention.